Happy Friday, everybody.
I'm afraid we all try that we I'm afraid
There he is. So, what you're listening to is his incredible solo record that just came out. We're going to talk about that in a minute. What up?
What up, Jim?
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Likewise. I was just playing one of your tracks.
I heard that. I heard
Over.
it. Thank you.
So what's new?
Nothing. That's the problem.
Well said. Nothing's new. Well, this is
No,
new. We've never done this before, so
no. This is
something's
kind
new.
of high tech.
What are you drinking?
Keeping it classic here.
Oh, there you go, Guinness. I'm currently on a cleanse, so I'm drinking soda water.
All right. Actually, haven't been drinking much lately, but this ought to be fun, nonetheless. What's going on out there, man? How have you been?
Uh, the same, basically. Like, I mean, like everybody, like it's Groundhog Day. But I'm healthy and I'm happy, and I'm making music, and we're keeping the restaurant open, best we can. And other than that, I mean, I can't complain. I'm here. It's all right. Every Friday, I hang out with somebody I want to hang out with, even though it's not in real life. But
Yeah, I feel you, man. It's been like it's it's really highlighted what's important, at home and being healthy and being okay and not being completely screwed, even though we all are kind of screwed by it. But I know people that are in much worse situations than I am. So I'm like, grateful for what I got. So I got speaking of what I got a little beast over here.
oh,
Wow, now I don't know if you can see my
that's your
buddy
that's your Instagram star right there.
Hot Carl.
Hot Carl brings so much joy to my life, Ben.
He hears me talking and he wants to play. He's like, "Oh, are you talking to me?" Because like he's the only person, the only other entity that I talk to.
I absolutely love Hot Carl. And then what's your cat's name?
Schmoba.
I forgot. Schmoba. Yeah, Hot
Yeah,
Carl and Schmoba action videos on your
man.
Instagram keep me very, very entertained.
It, it's a trip because it makes life move in slow motion. Like I'll just mess with them and hang out with them, and there goes Wednesday, like,
Yeah.
and it's worth it in a strange way. So
Um, hey, so first I wanted to ask you, congrats on this record. Um,
thank you.
what is it tuned to at the beginning of that?
That first song is C sharp. It's
Okay.
like it's drop C sharp. So a couple years ago, I did a tour in like 2008, I guess it was, and my buddy Ash was playing in my band, and I was having problems like hitting a lot of high notes, singing for like an hour a night. So he was like, "Dude, just tune down half a step and give yourself just an inch to
Yeah.
bounce off." And I tuned down for the tour, but when I got back from the tour, I actually preferred the way the guitars felt. I've been playing heavy strings all my life, and then I finally loosened up the tension. Was like, oh, this feels better. So I just stayed tuned in E flat like Metallica, and I drop tune that, so it goes down to C sharp. So
Yeah.
it's like a little bit of an abnormal lowness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's Queens do that a lot too, actually,
yeah.
right?
Queens and Failure, and isn't Unchained from Van Halen, I think, is in that C sharp too.
Oh, I don't know. My metal knowledge is poor.
That's all good, man. You got plenty of time now to tighten it up.
Yeah. I've been trying to discover little things here and there. So like if I'm working in the office, I'll try and pick something on Tidal that I've never listened to and
Mhm.
just listen to one whole album at a time. So a few days ago, I listened to and I don't know if it's his first album, but the first Fela Kuti album on Tidal. Um, just listened to that like over and over like 3 times and was like, why have I never, like, why do I not own these records? It's,
Right?
even though like you hear it, you're at a party or whatever, and like I know it, but when you really sit down and listen to it. So I'm just trying to keep doing that while we're in, this permanent state of not going fucking anywhere.
Yeah, man. That's a good thing to do. I dig that. Isn't Fela a trip, man?
Yeah.
Like, when you start kind of connecting the dots of when he made that music and what was going on elsewhere, it's like it. This will sound ridiculous and it'll sound kind of fucked up, but it actually, to me, made what Bob Marley was doing not so special.
I can see that.
Because I
Yeah.
was like, Bob had his thing and it was really well produced and it was real simple, open message. But like at the same time, Fella was like the evil version. Like the
The
like
mad genius.
people would roll into this dude's house and shoot him in the middle of the night. Like you're causing too much political problems. Pow!
Yeah.
Like, and he'd get on stage like later, be like, and this would happen regularly. Bob was famous because of the one event that he had gotten shot and still performed, the
Yeah.
assassination attempt, and that was huge. But that was like just a Thursday for Fella, you know.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So tripping on that. The thing I like too is so that album, the first one, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's 3 tracks, and they're all, of course, like 8 to 12 minutes or whatever. But like you
Yeah.
never lose interest, and you
No.
kind of like you just go into this zone, right? You're hypnotized, and I mean it's definitely not my skill set, but I love it. I love it. I couldn't imagine making that, but I love listening to it. It's cool. So what do you recommend? What should be my next thing to dive into?
You said what should be your next thing to dive into?
Yeah. So my next deep album dive.
That's a good question. I'm always tripping on something. There's always something that's touching me, but I kind of am used to the fact that when something hits me nowadays, it's not like a communal experience. It's not like everybody's going through the exact same shit and it hits the same way. Like music used to kind of happen that way, when everybody first heard Rage Against the Machine, it was a communal thing. Like it's like,
Yeah.
hey, did you hear that? Yeah, I fucking heard it. Wow. But now it's like I'm deep diving on Wikipedia, finding out who played harmonium on somebody's record, and I find out they got a brilliant solo record, and I tell people like, hey man, you got to check this out. And they're like, yeah, I'm kind of tripping on my own thread right now. But
Awesome.
all that being said, uh, what was the last thing? Just yesterday, I can't remember the name of the group. Just yesterday, a buddy of mine sent me a record because I'd sent him a record. We've been going back and forth for a little while. The new Hum record. Somebody
Oh,
recommended that to me this week, and I was never really a huge Hum fan. I appreciate Hum, and because of Hum, a lot of bands I love are better, you know.
right. Yeah.
But I went back and listened to this record, and it was raw and kind of loose and inspired, and I dug listening to it. It really made me feel good.
Well, that will be my next deep dive. What?
Sweet. My internet, my internet crappy.
We, I don't know. I think we're fine.
All right.
What was I gonna say? Yeah. So Hum, the next thing I'll get into. That's good. So what? Somebody was asking earlier on here about the vinyl for your record. Is
Oh,
that is it out?
uh, it's out in my living room right now. I got I got boxes and boxes of that and my last EP, and they're just sitting in my doorway. I I got everything ready to go. I just have to open up the web store and start shipping stuff. And I'm thinking maybe the end of this month, the beginning of next month, because it's like I'm gonna be doing this in my garage, sitting around licking stamps. So I just got to do it.
Can I make a recommendation? I think Hot Carl can help.
Yeah, if the stamps tasted like the cat's butthole, he'd lick them all day long. TMI.
No, no, it's good. It's good. So you're obviously in your home studio, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to looking at all your toys on Instagram.
Yeah, lots of buttons and knobs. Not a lot of talent in this room.
It's funny because when I put up the post that you were going to be my guest, it was like nonstop comments about your caliber of musicianship. Like you're so well respected by, I mean, not just fans and just people, but you know, musicians, which is that's the compliment, man. And I'm obviously a huge fan and think you're one of the rare multi-instrumental guys that is also cool and can write good songs. That's like a weird combination.
That's a huge compliment. Thank you. I struggle with it in my own head because I want to be I want to be as good as my friends all are. All my friends, most of my friends focus on one instrument and are one instrument or one style of songwriting or one kind of voice, and they're all just geniuses, and I feel like lucky to be in their presence. And I'm like trying to write songs, and I'm trying to play drums, and I'm trying to play guitar. I'm trying to do all these different things, but I so badly long to be like a real pro.
I know that you're too humble because you're obviously beyond a pro. What was your first instrument?
Drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was that?
It was 1985, and in 84, my oldest brother Ted had gotten a keyboard for graduating 8th grade, and he got this Korg Poly 800. And my brother Mike had gotten a guitar, his Les Paul copy, for graduating 8th grade. And I was fucking, I don't know, was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, whatever. And I remember my dad knew that I felt left out, so he went and got a drum set and brought a drum set home. And I still to this day don't understand how my dad in his mid 40s, late 40s, decided it would be a good idea to bring home all these instruments to his teenage and under teen boys and just let them tear ass all day long, all the time. Like we played drums and guitar. We played morning till night, all summer long. We played till like 11 o'clock at night in the basement. The whole house was shaking.
Yeah.
And never like, okay, it's too loud. You got to turn it down. You got to stop. Never.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's
It's good to
insane.
have parents like that.
Yeah,
My parents, we practiced in our house from, 12 or 13 years old until, well into after driving. We were still practicing in my parents' front room, full
did you guys,
volume.
did you guys have a basement? Is Texas a
No, no,
basement?
we just practiced in the den. So it's just like if they went from their room to the kitchen, they had to go past like horrific sounds,
What?
full volume chaos. This is like early, it's like when you graduate to the half stack and all of a sudden like you're like, oh, this gets even fucking louder. That's awesome. Like we would just get louder and louder, and then the bigger the band gets, the bigger your amps get, and then yeah, I don't know how they did it, but God bless them.
That's amazing.
Well,
Yeah,
there's no rehearsal spaces here. There's not any infrastructure for that in El Paso, especially 25 years ago. There wasn't
yeah.
like nowhere to go and like hang out with the older bands or like practice around other bands or whatever. You'd see each other at like the backyard show, and then you go home and practice, and then back to the backyard show or small club or whatever. But
You remember growing up and watching stupid ass TV shows that were aimed at kids, and like they would be like, let's start a band. And they'd be like, fine, we'll just set up in the back of my uncle's restaurant and practice there. And and
yeah,
everything just flowed perfectly. Like, what a fucking lie.
yeah, that's not true. I would like to recreate that whole arc experience on TV, like a real experience of how all of this works.
Can you
I
imagine?
think it would be fascinating.
It might be
That's
fascinating
me.
because we went through it and we did all that crap, but I think it might just be like really sad and disappointing to people who never seen that world before. You know?
Yeah. I don't know, but you're living on that. Um, like, what is it that makes you do this young? It's pure um, exhilaration, right? Of just creating something that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. That's 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 what the fuel is, right? And it's this endless fuel. There's no. It's like a perpetual motion machine, because the
Yeah,
idea of making something new makes you work, and just by working, the product is you make something new, and then you just keep doing it. Like, I can't at this point ever imagine stop making music. I look at the room behind you. You're obviously not going to stop making music anytime soon,
I hope
because you're
not.
still doing that, right? You're still
Yeah,
after the thing that you've never heard or you haven't made.
yeah. It's a trip to think that life was a lot simpler as a kid, and there was a lot less things kind of entering, trying to trying to fight for your mental attention. But it's crazy to think of how I could sit there with a guitar, and when I learned how to do something new, first time I could play something, it was like it was the best thing in the world. There was nothing better than that. I didn't want to be anywhere else in the world except for right there and then. It was like everything made sense, and it that thing still kind of exists. It's a little bit harder now because I'm lazier as I'm older, and I learned how to do a bunch of things. So I got to aim a little higher now, and the higher up the mountain, the more treacherous the trail. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like it gets harder to get better, but it still is there when something clicks. Everything becomes quiet. All the chaos and static goes away. All the outside electricity disappears, and just for a minute, like there's purpose and sense, and it's okay. You know?
Yeah, I do. It's the best. All right, so back to it. You're playing drums at, if I did my math right, about 8 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then,
And then I was too young and too shitty of a drummer to be in my brother's band because they were in high school. They were like graduating high school, and they had a band, and they made demos. And at some point, we're like talking with A&R people, and they were doing stuff, and that kind of came and went like it does with most situations and most people. And by the time I got to high school, I started my first band with this kid Brian who played drums, and we got this kid Sam. I originally asked this kid Greg to play bass because I knew he played bass, but he was like, "No, talk to my boy Sam." So this kid from this other school, way far away, came down to play bass, and we had our first little band, little trio, and we would practice and just shred, and that was like, I'm going to get out the hood. This is my way to make it out the hood.
do you
But
ever? I want to pause on that for a second. Do you ever think about that moment now that you have, like, the life that you're living now? Do you ever look back at that just for a split second and say that that one thought was A and this is B, and to just think about that journey? It's such a cool thing to hear somebody say.
it's unbelievable because I realized that I pretty much jumped off a diving board on the moon and dove through the eye of a needle in like the Mariana Trench, and didn't touch the sides. Like I made it through the most incredible sieve in the world. But I also, it's kind of long-winded, but the journey from there to here, I was there every day for it, and every day required something, and it required getting up and doing it, and not giving up. And there were lots of times where it was like, I need to give this up because this is fucking stupid, and it sucks, and it's hurting the people around me, and I'm not enjoying my life right now because of it. There were lots of days of that, and that's something that it's hard to really express and really communicate. But I can see the difference in some of the people that I came up with and I was playing with. Some of the people had brilliant things about them, but to get from back there to here was not the path that they were meant to take for whatever reason, you know, for the sake of the universe, for everything coming together. And and no, it just it, it it wasn't easy. That's kind of like the thing that I want to say, but I feel shitty saying it because it's like we get to do this great thing. We should just be grateful for it and shut up, you know?
Yeah.
I can understand someone looking at it and seeing it that way because I feel that way sometimes about other
Sure.
things. But man, were there some fucking days, man? Some days that like I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies.
Yeah. No, we were actually, I had Tegan Quinn on last week, and we talked kind of in depth about the lower moments of touring and how sort of that takes a toll. But at the same time, you don't want to ruin people's good time because they're, you know, especially in a live situation, you know, like Ben Folds has that great line, nobody likes a bellyache and rock star. Like, nobody paid a ticket to see you bitch, right? Like,
Yeah.
they bought a ticket so that they could have a good time. So either way, so okay, now first band, and then moving on. How did you get from there to? Because when I met you, you were already in Incubus, but before Incubus, you had a stretch with the Roots. So how did that go?
Well, I had my high school band. It ended up not working out with the drummer Brian, and my buddy Jimmy came and played drums. We shredded for a while. That band had like different variations, and fast forward a couple years later, and it was Jimmy and this guy Chris and myself, and we're in New Jersey, down to Jersey Shore, and we're like, we're sitting down and trying to figure out our avenues to get out of the Jersey Shore scene because we could play, we could bring a few hundred people to the local bar, and that was that. And then we jump in a minivan and drive, like we drive to North Carolina, drive deep into Pennsylvania, up to Boston, and we play to nobody, period. And then come back and then play to our 100 people at the Jersey Shore, and we were just like what is it? Why doesn't this click? And we are like, we got to get out of here. And if you drew on the map an arrow, like you drew a line from New York to Philly, and then drew a line going like that, this is where we were. So we were like, do we want to move to New York? Or do we want to move to Philly? And at the time, it was like mid '90s, late '90s. So moving to New York, it wasn't as expensive as it is now, but it was insanely expensive, impossible. We're like, okay, we'll all cram into a one bedroom for 2,500 a month, and we'll have to get jobs. We're like, we can go to Philly and we can get a two bedroom for 1,000 a month, and we got friends over there, and we can get gigs in Philly for sure.
Yeah.
So we moved to Philly, and we had a lot of help. There was a group of guys in a band called the Suburban Hoods, which was like this rap group from Philly. They were awesome dudes, and they helped us out and really took care of us. And that lasted for a while, but then it kind of fizzled out because we're all like 20, 21 years old, man. The amount of testosterone shooting through our veins could light up the city. Like we were young men, and we were a pain in the ass to each other, all sleeping on top of each other in this little ass apartment. So we kind of started spreading out, and I was like, okay, I need to eat. You know, I'm living off of $20 a week here, and scraping to get by, and like I had two guitars, and I sold one of my favorite guitars just to pay rent. I was like, that I never want to do that again. Shit fucking hurt. Then I sold my favorite amp the month after that. Then I was like, God, I got to do something. So I started taking gigs, any gigs that I could get, where if somebody needed a bass player, somebody needed a drummer, guitar player, whatever, for different bands playing in the corner of a restaurant on a Saturday night, to actually filling in for real musicians and real bands, and like, well, I'm not saying that restaurants not real musicians, but people who were like touring bands, like anything. I was doing anything and everything, and it just started to snowball. Like I figured out that I could learn songs really quickly. If I just cleared my mind, I could learn a song by listening to it 3 times and then turn around and be able to play it. And that was like indispensable. You know, because someone would give me a tape on Friday and be like, "Can you play the gig tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They'd be like, "All right, we'll pay you $40." I was like, "Sweet, I'm there." And I ended up doing that until I was just surviving doing that. I was paying rent, and a couple maybe a year went by, and I had a little bit of a reputation as like, "Oh, he's a guy you can hire to play in your band," you know. And uh, and my brother was dating this woman who was part of the Roots camp, right? And she so this is so like hard to explain in a concise way. The Roots used to put on this Sunday jam session every Sunday at Amir's house, at Questlove's house. And then they ended up kind of spreading it out and moving it to the wetlands, New York City. And then they made it so it was featuring women. It was like women only for this show. And it was all under the Roots camp. And the Roots were like, there was, you know, 5 guys in the band and about 70 people who all did something for the Roots in Philly. Like it was like a whole family. And this woman, Leslie, she was like, we need a backup musician. So come to the rehearsals and come to the show. And I don't know what you'll play, but if anyone ever screws up, you're on. So, so I'm hanging out at these rehearsals, and there are the most beautiful women I've ever been around in my life, just walking around and all day long. I mean, yo, you have no idea. This was, oh my goodness. Anyway, I'm just like glad to be there, just smiling and listening to the songs. And like this 2 weeks into like hanging around as the backup dude, I go to New York to Wetlands for the show, and it's showtime, and the bass player is not there. Where's the bass player? We don't know where he is. Well, we got to start because we got to wrap up by such and such a time, drive back to Philly. So Leslie's like, Ben, you're on. Get up there. So I jump up on stage. I'm holding the bass and I'm playing bass and I know all the songs. Been hanging out at rehearsals, you know. And I said, okay, cool. And everyone's like, thanks, man. That was great. Whatever. And the next week, the bass player came back and I'm hanging out and I'm just glad to be there again. You know, surrounded by beautiful women once again and hanging out in New York City. 20, 21, 22 years old. You know, like just stoked. But then the week after that, he doesn't show up again. Nobody knows where he is, doesn't call anybody. So like, Ben, it's your turn. And I get up there, I play, and then the next Monday I'm hanging out at the rehearsals and they're like, we should just get you to do the gig. Why don't you just do the gig? You know the stuff, whatever. We could pay you half as much as we paid the other bass player.
There you go.
And I ended up falling in love with the gig and falling in love with the girls. Like all the girls were great. Just they were they were so good at singing. There were so many great singers there that I actually really was afraid to sing for years because of that. And but I love playing bass and I love being in the band with them. And into like the Roots organization, you know, within like a couple of weeks, I'm freestyling the jam sessions with Questlove and Black Thought, and getting to know the guys peripherally, and it's just kind of clicking. Like I'm enjoying it. I dig what they're about. I mean, they're insanely talented cats. They're brilliant people, and we kind of we vibed, we clicked. And then before I was even a member of the Roots, Questlove was like, "Hey, come to the studio with me. We're working on this record, working on that record." He started pulling me on board to do studio work, and then the Roots tour manager Tina Farris had gotten in Questlove's ear, was like, "Why don't you just bring him out?" And he was like, "Yeah, I should bring him out. Yeah." So they started bringing me out for shows, playing guitar, and then time just starts flying by. Now I'm still doing the show with the girls on Sundays and Tuesdays. Tuesdays in Philly, Sunday in New York. Then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I'm touring with the Roots and like going out doing like these 3-day runs. And I'm playing music every day. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I got rent money. All of a sudden, I bought new clothes for the first time. You know, bought a guitar. It was like living the life, man. And that just kind of snowballed until like I'm in the studio and we're making phrenology. And
Such a good story.
yeah, and this is all like, I guess I was 25 when that happened, maybe. 24, 25. It happened like just one night I went to sleep and the next night I woke up and I'm in Electric Lady for like the 10th day in a row in New York, hanging out with Questlove and Mos Def and Erica Badu, and we're all like hanging out making music. I'm like, this is the craziest shit in the world, and it's the best, you know.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, like Questlove dragged me around like a suitcase. Like he took me to every session and he stuck me on every record, and it was like it was cool because I was the same age as most other kids that were in college, you
Yeah.
know, and that was the time when my brain was plastic like that. I could take it all in, and I got to witness this talent, this like exponential talent from all sides, and just be like, that's what the real shit is like. Like, you know, I know what it's like to play in the restaurants with the bros. I know what it's like to play down the shore with all the bands in Jersey. But this was different. Like these people would actually die for this shit if it came down to it, and that was different. And that's how I ended up there, and I just loved it.
Well, I can tell I've never met any of them at all, but I could tell I would know that they're good folks, that they're good people because of the way you act. And it's like when you're trained or when you're brought up by a certain group of people, like I believe that the community that brought me up, not just my parents or whatever, but the punk rock community in this city, um, I think they brought me up to be a decent person, and I can tell exactly the same from you. So cheers to them, man.
Yeah, cheers to them. So so I don't really know. I mean, we've hung out, we've spent many a late night shooting the shit. But what happened? What happens after the living room for you?
Oh, well, we were in the living room.
Wait, you've told me this before. You've told me, you've given me the drunken long version at least once or twice. We've been somewhere, Australia, whatever, over too many beers, and you've been
Yeah.
like, here's the whole story.
I love staying up late after a show, and I love having drinks. And the last time, well, I mean, I saw you on tour a couple of years ago, but before that, we hadn't seen each other in a while, and you guys had played in El Paso or just outside El Paso, and I came over after the show and met
Yeah.
you at the hotel bar. That's my favorite setting. Like I don't like busy bars. Like I don't want to meet anybody. I'm not trying to like be on the scene. I don't go to like after party necessarily, but hotel bars, man, that's my shit. Like hanging out with my dude in a hotel bar until the guy closed and we just stayed there.
Yeah.
It was good. So, I mean, the short story, the sober short story is, so I was in a high school band here called Self, which I kind of lied and said, I started playing bass when I was 12. Um, I met this guy at Sound Warehouse. Remember Sound Warehouse? It was like the video, it was like a Blockbuster kind of thing, but it had music, had records as well. So I met this guy at Sound Warehouse when I was 16, and I was buying a Fugazi cassette, and we started talking, and he said, oh, I'm in a band. He was like 7 years older than me. He was like 23, I think. He said, I have a band, but we need a singer guitar player. And I said, oh, yeah, for sure. I sing and play guitar, no problem. And he said, okay, here's my number. And I called him, and we set up a time to go practice at the other guy's house, whatever. And then I had to call my cousin Jeremy and borrow his guitar because I didn't have a guitar. I only had a bass. So I borrowed his, and he had like a Les Paul Studio. So I showed up to these dudes' practice with like a Les Paul Studio. So they immediately were like, "Oh, this guy's legit, right? Like he Paul Studio, like a real guitar, no problem." And all I did was write songs, just with fifths. That's everything I wrote was just a fifth because I didn't know chords really. So I was just playing bass lines, but adding a fifth, and that's what I did. And I would sort of make up singing on the spot. And for whatever reason, it was great. I learned a lot. He was a great mentor to me. Again, like somebody that was 24 that was gentle with me, let me learn on my own. I mean, I was basically a frontman at 16, playing like shows. Sometimes there's 5 people, and then maybe we play at the university, and there'd be a couple of hundred. And I took to it. I loved it. It was in my personality, I guess. But when I graduated, this guy was like, he already had a real life. He had a girlfriend and an apartment and a job and was going to college, and he didn't want to tour. And all I wanted to do was tour. So I told my parents, I don't want to go to college. I just want to be in a band. and sort of the best front man in town was Cedric. So I hit him up and said, "Do you want to start a band? I don't want to be a front man necessarily. I just want to be in a band that tours." So he and I started it, found some other guys, practiced, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and then we went on like a 1-week tour that December in Texas. And then the following summer did like a 42-day tour with a 7-inch. And that was it. Like we essentially never played a smaller show than the last one. Like we just kept, 5 or 10 people at a time. Played New York City to nobody except the front of house guy and the bartender. Next time we went, played to 50 people because they told everyone, "Oh, this band's ridiculous. Like come and see them. They're crazy." So just kept building on that. And then I think when all the dudes moved to LA in 98, I think 98. Yeah, that's when we stopped practicing at my parents' house, basically. They all moved to LA. So,
Wow.
and then I started flying to LA to go to practice and, sleeping on their floors there. But that was it, pretty much. And then when did you join Incubus? What was that?
So that's one of my favorite little like parallel things. Like you ending up in Incubus is an example of how whatever's going on with you right now, you don't know what you've set in motion to come back around to you tomorrow. So it's 2001, and I forget what was exactly going on, but I had my plate was full, and the manager of the Roots was like, "Yeah, we got this tour this summer with Moby, like 50 dates or something. The actual tour was only 30 dates, but we're going to do double headers. We're going to do matinee shows on the Moby tour and then go play headliners in secondary cities at night. So it was like 50 dates in like 30 days, like something insane. And it's going to be this summer. It's sponsored by Microsoft, big ass tour, whatever. And I was like, I feel like I should stay around this summer and work with the girls and sit this tour out, because it's not like, I love touring with the Roots, but I wasn't like, it wasn't like I was a leg of the table. You take me out and the table's going to fall,
Yeah. That's a great analogy.
So that's the way I think. Like there's certain band members that are absolutely legs of tables, and that's us. Put a little pin in this, but that's why a trio is kind of the most insane setting ever. But come back to that later. So I didn't. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this tour. He's like, just do it. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. And then Questlove was like, play bass on this tour, and I was like, well, shit, yeah. Because playing bass with Questlove playing drums, it's like it's just too easy. It's the easiest thing in the world because his timing is so special. Everything that you play makes you sound like the most genius bass player in the world. No matter how fast you play, no matter how slow you play, when you play on top of him, you seem like you invented the shit because of him. Yeah. And he was like, come play bass. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to do that now. I went out and we go and we're playing with Incubus. And I knew of Incubus. Of course, I knew Drive and stuff like that. And I knew the album Make Yourself. A buddy of mine had given it to me. He's like, check this out. It's cool. And it was cool. It was like, it was us. It was Nelly Furtado. It was Incubus. It was Outkast. And it was Moby. And that was our tour. Oh, and Incubus had to bail like 3 weeks into the tour, and New Order was going to take Incubus's place for the last week and a half of the tour. So I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be. So we go out, we're on tour, and the first day I remember I met Dirk Lance, the bass player of Incubus, and we're chopping it up in the hallway. And I over like the next few hours on the first day, I remember it was in the DTE in Detroit, the amphitheater out there. Yep. And I met all the guys over the course of the next few hours, and I was just like, I like these dudes, man. There's a vibe there. Like they're kind of, you feel familiar in a certain way, and I dig it. And they killed it. I mean, they played every night, and they played just spotless performances and killed it. When I could see it, there was a couple times I had to leave while they were playing because we were driving from one city to the next to go play at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. But we just kind of, what's up, hey, tour bros, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I came home, and then I came home, and as far as I knew, that was that. But they had just dropped Morning View, that record at that time, and they were going around and around on this endless tour, lasted
Yeah.
like 2 years, and every time they came to Philly, we'd hang out, and I'd go and hang out with them and see them before the show, after the show, we'd be hanging out, and because the first time they came on that tour, they played the Electric Factory, which the third floor of the building that the Electric Factory is attached to is all recording studios, and the Roots were in all of those rooms like 24/7. So it was downstairs from work. It was like, oh, the Incubus guys are downstairs. Let's go. The first time they came through, me and Questlove went down and jumped on stage while they were playing, and it was just that was the first time. The second time they came around, they played the Spectrum, which is like, oh, this is different. The Spectrum was like 14,000 people, not bad, and it was outrageous. The show was perfect, and we hung out that night, and then it just was like, yo, yeah, those are my boys, the California guys. Love those dudes. And I'm touring with the Roots, and we're killing it. We cut the record chronology, and all this wild stuff is happening like fast. It's picking up. We did the first episode of the Chappelle Show. I remember that night specifically because I was at Electric Lady, and I love Dave Chappelle as a comedian, and it's like, hey, he's coming to the studio. We're going to play some music, and it's going to be on his pilot episode for this show he's doing for fucking Chappelle Show, And all this stuff was starting to pick up, and we dropped the record chronology, and the critics went crazy about it, and it was like, it's all starting to happen, and we go out, we tour the States, we do this U.S. tour. It's with, I think we might have toured with Outkast. I feel like I toured with Outkast for 4 years straight. Every band I was in was touring with Outkast, and it was awesome. We finished this U.S. tour, and halfway through the U.S. tour, I get a phone call, and it's Mike from Incubus, and he's like, what's going on, man? What's going on? He's like, you want to come out and do this gig with me? We're jamming. We got this stuff going on. A bunch of songs that I wrote that sound like 60s movie soundtrack stuff. Come out and jam. And yeah, and just so you know, Alex isn't a part of the band anymore. Dirk Lance left the band. Oh, okay. So I ended up going out, doing that gig in between stuff with the Roots, and the gig was cool, it was fun, and it was like, yeah, if you want to be part of this band, it'd be cool. We like the way that you vibe, and we think you'd fit. And I was like, yeah. Let me see what's up. I talked to the guys in the Roots. I'm messing up my timeline here. I know I'm gonna.
Right.
All my stuff's kind of blurry, but after being like, I think I really want to take this gig. The first thing I did was I got on the phone with my dad, and I was like, Pop, this is kind of wild because I'm in a big band, and good things are happening, and this other big band called me up, and I'm interested in doing that, and I don't like the Roots are not going to die if I go to Incubus, and it's like it's an opportunity. Up until this point in my life, like the fork in the road. It didn't take a millisecond to know which direction to go in. Whenever there was an option to go left or right, I was like, of course I'm going this direction. No doubt, even when I was dead ass wrong, I thought I knew before. And this one, I was like, I didn't know what to do. Talked to my pop. My pop was like, do what you think will make you happy. And if anybody doesn't like it, then they don't want you to be happy. As simple as that. I was like,
Good advice.
yeah. And then the next person I talked to Black Thought. We were on tour, and we were in Texas, as a matter of fact. We were in Austin, and we took a taxi to Whole Foods. And I was like, Tariq, man, I got to talk to you, man. The guys from Incubus asked me to come play bass. And I was scared because I like Tariq is like he's like a big brother to me. I mean, he's one of the coolest people I know, and just like just intimidated by his presence, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, here's what's going on. And I was scared of how he'd react to it. He was like, "Oh, you got to do it. You'd fit in that band. That makes you'd be great for that band, man. That'd be awesome." And I was like, "Oh, sweet." So I had I had one down. I had to go ask Questlove, and that was the one I was saving that for last because because he had done so much for me
Yeah.
as far as just plucking me out of my existence and then plugging me into his world and just vouching for me, going into all these sessions, going everywhere. It's like, that's Ben. He's going to play guitar. He's going to play bass. He's my dude. Um, and I just didn't want him to feel like I was dissing him, you know. And we were sitting in an airport, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but I remember telling him, I was like, "Yeah, Incubus asked me to come play bass," and he's like, "Yeah, do it. Go do it. You'll kill it. You'll kill it. You'll be perfect for it."
Yeah.
And then it was like all of a sudden I 1,000 pounds lighter,
Yeah.
and I was out.
That's such love, though, man. That's such fucking
Yeah,
love. You know, instead of trying to keep you and like, that is, yeah, you're lucky. You're a fucking lucky guy. I mean, not because you got in these bands. I'm saying because you were surrounded by people that, in that situation, would be like, oh, that's gonna be great for you. Fuck yeah, you should go do it.
yeah.
And
That's.
that,
I mean, it wasn't even like it. Like nobody took it personal. Everybody was just
right,
like, "You and
because it's
Incubus,
not. It's not
go."
fucking personal. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole thing. Like you have to, musicians have to be able to move, right? And when someone can recognize that movement and be like, oh, you would fit great in that circle, like that's so, man, that's awesome. As you can tell, I've never heard that story and I'm blown away.
It's especially to me. It's especially powerful because like now that I'm in my 40s, I'm an older musician. I kind of I I I know where I'm at in the game, and I know where people my age where they can end up at this point, where they can let like bitterness and all sorts of they can let feelings go inside that mess things up, and they can think that they're supposed to leave a band or do something else, or they can think that these things are supposed to happen for
Yep.
reasons that are like so kind of small and self-serving, and they can like they can kick members out of bands, break up bands, start new bands. All that shit happens with older musicians. It happens a lot for just the straight up wrong reasons. And it's even with younger bands, just bands in general. The egos can be so sensitive, and the whole thing can be so fragile that people coming and going, it's like it destroys everything.
Yeah.
And to know in that situation at that time, like I was working really hard in that band, and I was enjoying being in that band, and that the two dudes, the two captains of the band, didn't hesitate to like just be like, well, what's best for you?
Right.
Like
So this is what I always say when people ask advice, like when younger, you know, kids ask advice about being in a band. And my favorite trait to try and pass along is selfless. Like I think it's so important if you're in a group of creative people that are collaborating to be selfless. Like it's not about you,
yeah,
right? And when you do think it's about you, it rarely works out well for anybody because it's just, to me, it's just that fucks the chemistry. Like those components don't work together. Like selfish and musicians collaborating, that shit doesn't work at all. I wanted to, we got about 10 minutes before we get cut off, so, which is awesome, time's flying. But I wanted to quickly tell this story because I love it, and this is where we met. We met on tour when you guys graciously asked us, Sparta, to come and play the tour with you, which was like our first, kind of like first arena tour in the band. Like we hadn't been a band for very long. This was like our second record, right? And we met and we hit it off. And when people talk about like, you know, the craziness of backstage and like the rock and roll antics or whatever, like, so we played dodgeball. That's what we did. Pretty much
yeah,
every night. We would play, and then you would play, and then we would have some drinks, and we would mark out basically a dodgeball court in the parking lot behind the arena,
Mm-hmm.
and we would and we would play dodgeball for like fucking hours until bus call, right? And we would like drink and party, but really it was pretty intense. Like our dodgeball was pretty intense, which leads me to like, you know, the whole thing you were saying, you can listen to a song 3 times and then play it. So I want to say it was Detroit. So Christine was on tour with us. She left that night, flew home. That night we went out and played dodgeball, and I think it was that night. Either way, one of those nights, Tony slipped, hurt his hand, could not play. And he was such, again, this was like a real selfless act on his part. He could have easily said, we're done. We got to go home. If it's not me playing, you know, we're not going to do this. Somebody else can take the gig. And you guys, you and Jose stepped up and said, each of us will take 3 songs. That way you can still play a 6-song set. And I remember the first night where, because you guys like listened to it, you did sound check, whatever. Tony sat next to you so that he could talk to you or whatever. And I'm singing, so I can't turn around. I can't look at you. I can't. It was the most nerve-wracking first 30 seconds of my musical career for sure. Because I was like, here's an arena. People don't really know us. And I have these guys behind me that I don't know. And I'm just going to have to like take a breath and fucking hope that this, and you guys were so perfect. Obviously it was insane. And it was amazing, but just that, I will never forget that first 30 seconds of walking on a stage and just being like, this is either going to be super awesome or this is going to be super fucked up. And I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't move. Right. And you killed it though. And yeah, I mean, you kept us alive for that, like whatever 10 or 12 shows he needed to rest his arm, and he was able to come back at the end and play. It was the best.
That was really, that was a highlight for me. I mean, I can't imagine you had to go up there in front and be the voice and the face of the whole thing. So if it wrecked, it was all egg in your face and only your face. You know, like
Yeah.
those are like we got a mulligan for the 2 hours after the set. You know. Yeah, thank you for putting faith in us like that. I mean, we talked about
honestly,
Jose.
I think that it's the caliber of musicians. Obviously, that's not a problem, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't learn somebody's songs and have the confidence, like the pure confidence of going up and doing that. I'd be scared. But yeah, you killed it.
We were listening to the guy's set every night. We were listening to the record in between gigs, like on bus rides and stuff. And it was like the whole idea of you not being able to do the show was like, oh no, that's not cool. And
But again, selfless. Like that was you saying, what can I do to help get this to keep going, to keep making?
It's not totally selfless though. I mean, getting to play Sparta songs on drums is pretty damn fun. So I I didn't get compensated for it. You know, I was up there like, I'm playing drums in an arena. Ah!
I guess I never thought about it that way, but yeah. Oh, it's good. Man, I've enjoyed this so much. I miss hanging out, and as soon as this shit is done, we will be hanging out, hopefully in a hotel bar.
Yeah, oh, I'll just come to your house, man.
All right.
Come find you.
Just bring hot Carl. That's the requirement.
Shot you, man.
What's up? I'm gonna see. Last week, my cat made an appearance, and he's looking at me right now. No, he's gonna chill. He was trying to decide if he was gonna jump up. Hey, Ben, man, I love you. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. This has been super
Jim,
fun.
I love you, buddy.
All right, man. I will see you soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
Later. Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out on Friday. Next week, my guest is going to be Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, who is our congresswoman from our district. And we'll get to talk about, you know, not just politics, other fun stuff as well. All right, guys, have a good week. Take care of each other. Be safe. We'll see you. Bye.